Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Supatease here, and I've got some pretty big 8.2 PvP and just broadly World of Warcraft news to bring to you today. And I know I haven't been here for a while, and it's because I'm, just as I can imagine you are, eagerly awaiting 8.2 to see some changes made to the game, hopefully for the better. Now, here is one of those very important changes that could potentially happen. What this basically is there's an essence system coming in 8.2, which in my mind is like a glyph system where you'll be getting an on-use ability, some minor powers to your character, and a little bit of tweaks. That's great. To me, it's also effectively like a third trinket slot, so you'll have a third on-use ability for your class or your spec. But now this is an essence that gives you an extra honor talent, which makes me think that it's also optional. Also, these are all, they could be changed. It's not guaranteed. It's not set in stone. Also, there's no guarantee that the abilities that I'm going to go through in this video are guaranteed to stay the same. As we can see the blue post here, at this time, not all the choices have been replaced or modified as needed to be acceptable in PvE. So there's no guarantee that it will remain like this, but I wanted to go through the initial run of it, give my thoughts, and I'm going to be going through all of the classes. In this specific instance, we're starting with Death Knight, just because it's alphabetical. With Frost, they are going to get Chill Streak baseline, so you're just effectively getting more damage. This then opens you up. I got the talent calculator here. This opens you up to have a whole bunch more options, right? So if we are just getting that baseline, that then means we can get Death Chill, we can get more roots, we can get Heartstop Delirium combo for mages, you could get Necrotic Aura. It's basically just more damage or better utility against mages for Frost Death Knight overall. Then if we go back, we look at Unholy. Unholy is going to be able to get Necrotic Strike baseline, which is a really big deal because Necrotic Strike is effectively mandatory for Unholy Death Knight, at least in Arena. So if that's the case, then once again you can get access to more defensive cooldowns or more damage. So you could take the anti-magic zone more frequently. You could take, usually taking Necromancer's Bargain most of the time, and Raise Abomination, but something like Necrotic Aura, so you can play with spellcasters more often. It really just opens you up to get more damage and more defense when you're able to get a fourth honor talent slot. Then when we move over to Demon Hunter, this one I was a bit on the fence with whether or not it was actually good or bad. Demonic Origins is an honor talent that you basically never take as a Demon Hunter now, because I'm 99% sure that it doesn't provide any damage bonus outside of your Metamorphosis. It's just a 2-minute cooldown and reduction and duration. Now, Demon Hunter has absolutely no problem getting into Metamorphosis when it's playing its demonic Blind Fury build, where it can use I-Beam and access its Metamorphosis frequently, very frequently. So Demonic Origins is an honor talent that was basically never taken, and I think it's actually a damage per second loss to take Demonic Origins. Now, that could be situational. You have to also understand that these honor talents will be usable in player versus environment situations. So potentially in a Mythic Plus scenario where it's non-fortified and you want Metamorphosis to get on more trash pulls, this might be better, because that was basically the advantage of this honor talent, was that you could just get the cooldown more frequently. But now, since Demon Hunter is so different, you're already always in Metamorphosis. I think it's a damage loss, because then your main Metamorphosis doesn't last 30 seconds, I believe, which is a really long time to just have that last. I guess it's extra mobility. If you want to take that into consideration, it's a 2-minute cooldown extra jump. But overall, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure that this is actually a DPS gain. The only thing it is for sure is a mobility gain, but it's kind of just bleh for Demon Hunter in my mind. I feel like Demon Hunter would have much preferred something like Reverse Magic, baseline, some utility. Maybe it's kind of difficult because if there's no way they're going to make Cover of Darkness a baseline, because in PvE Darkness is already really powerful. This just turns it into a raid ice block. And this is kind of where the annoying part of this system that they're trying to implement is that it's shared between PvE and PvP. So you really have to consider that, like, which one of these honor talents can they actually give you baseline? maybe on any hatred, but you don't really take that much magic damage in PvE, and maybe in some bosses. Demon Hunter seems like a difficult one to actually like pin down what is the best choice overall when you consider that it has to go between PvE and PvP, and also trying to take into account like what does Demon Hunter really need that would make it feel more interesting or more fulfilled, right, by giving it this baseline honor talent slot. So I could see why this one is difficult. In my mind, in terms of utility, reverse magic would be a good choice, but then maybe it's treading too far into priest territory on raid boss mechanics where you want mass dispel for multiple magic debuffs. Maybe it's too powerful if it's available. I guess the other thing to take into account, because these are essences and you can like put them in and take them out and put different ones in, they're not mandatory. So if this actually is a DPS loss and it's bad for you as a Havoc Demon Hunter, maybe you just don't even need it. You go with a different essence entirely, right? There's that to take into consideration, but Havoc Demon Hunter seems a bit strange overall. Now we're moving over to Druid. Druid got a lot of really good ones. Again, I don't know if these are subject to change 100%, but Moonkin Aura was effectively baseline as an honor talent for Moonkin anyway, and if you really take this into consideration for PvE, it changes the rotation a bit, because maintaining the new Moonkin Aura is a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Engaging. You much more frequently have to pay attention to your astral power to make sure that your spell critical strike chance remains maxed out at 3 stacks. It adds a lot of gameplay to the class. I actually like Moonkin Aura a lot in PvP, so this should be fun in PvE as well. And then getting this baseline as a balanced druid is really big, because you have a lot of honor talents that you would like to take, but you can't really always take. So if we have Moonkin Aura baseline, it then opens us up to more often be able to take Thorns, because typically you're running the Celestial Guardian, the Cyclone, and the Moonkin Aura, right? So if we get rid of that, you got Celestial Guardian, Cyclone, then you got the third one open, where you can go for utility, maybe even extra defense, or a little bit of extra defense damage trade-off. This honor talent choice was really potent, and Moonkin can really utilize it. Like this is a very powerful choice for them. Leader of the pack for Feral, which is basically just a heal for the team that they're playing with. It makes sense because Ferals typically are seen for their lack of survivability, so this choice makes sense in that regard. And then it opens them up, obviously, to be able to pick other honor talents, similarly to Boomkin. So I can only imagine that since Cyclone's return, Feral Druids are taking it most of the time. But you can then take other talents on top of it. Maybe Thorns more often against double melee. Maybe even the Freedom Sprint for your teammate to be able to escape to safety. Although it seems that you would probably want to take King of the Jungle every game, so you're getting more healing, you're more survivable, and then the Ferocious Wound and the Cyclone. This one's just a nice overall utility, and if you think about it in PvE, it adds some interesting... I'm almost wondering if it's too powerful in raids and how they plan to deal with that, because 4% of your maximum health every 6 seconds when you crit, it seems very good in PvE if I'm just looking at it like that, so maybe this won't stay like that. Sharpened Claws for Guardian is just extra damage, and then Restoration, interestingly, is getting Overgrowth baseline when you take this Essence. And again, usable in PvE and PvP, which instantly applies all of your heal over time effects. So really powerful recovery mechanic in PvE, although it's high intensity on mana cost, but when you pair it with Innervate, you can make it free. So Resto Druid, again, is just getting more powerful in PvE. I haven't really seen any balance tuning changes of any significance, at least not to Restoration Druid, so if anything, this just means Restoration Druid is even stronger in Mythic Plus. And then in PvP, obviously, to be able to have Overgrowth baseline is very nice. Again, because it just opens you up to more things. You can even maybe in some situations run Mark of the Wild, which is very powerful against Elemental Shamans, Balanced Druids, even in some cases Destruction Warlocks, Fire Mages, because it reduces Nature, Fire, Frost, and Arcane damage. You can more often go Master Shapeshifter for Feral Affinity, because you don't need the Overgrowth. You could even run Nourish more often. Basically, our Resto Druid's going to be getting an extra button, pretty much, from this change, or maybe a bit of extra defense. if you really want to go for that instead. So getting overgrowth baseline might be problematic in PvE, so who knows if it'll actually stay like that, but in PvP it's going to add a lot more to the class or to the spec. Then moving to Hunter. Hunter was one where it was a little bit difficult for me to determine whether or not it was a good or a bad thing. Now, this honor talent in PvP is crazy powerful because it removes harmful magic effects and reduces damage by 99% for 1.5 seconds. So if you're about to be hit by a very powerful spell like a Touch of Death, you can feign death right before it hits. Doesn't exist. It's out of the match. Being able to remove harmful magic effects, not only being able to remove damage over time, but also removing the Gladiator's Maledict trinket, which is basically taken in every single game. So you've got an extra dispel to remove that. So in PvP, this makes a lot of sense. Now in PvE, I mean, it also makes some sense to me if there's a large hitting mechanic that otherwise you maybe aspect of the turtle, you can then just feign death instead. Although you have to time it a lot better. It's a lot tighter, right? A 1.5 second timing is a lot smaller than aspects of the turtles. But it kind of makes sense. Although when I was reading down in the comments down below, a lot of people were really upset with this. They didn't think that it made any sense at all. And it's not really more damage or more utility, right? I mean, it's survivability. It's a defensive. And maybe that's actually what Hunters needed. But now, since I'm more focused on PvP, we'll take a look at the honor talents for Hunters overall in PvP, which, I mean, we don't really see a lot of Hunters, right? But if you've got Survival Tactics baseline, which I think for the most part you take every game because of the Gladiator's Maledict trinket, that then just opens you up to have more options. So Wild Protector is pretty baseline, just extra damage reduction for your team, and then in a lot of cases I'm seeing the Dire Beast Basilisk. So if we take that into account, Dire Beast Basilisk and Wild Protector are auto locked in. Then go for Roar of Sacrifice, so you've got extra utility. And then maybe you can drop out, I don't even know if you would drop it. It seems to me that Beast Mastery is a bit tight on honor talents. You're still basically going to only be playing the 3 with Roar of Sacrifice, Basilisk, and Wild Protector. Maybe if you're not playing with a class that can utilize Wild Protector, because it's next to your pets, which is melee range. But Hunters are, at least Beastmaster is usually playing with melee DPS, so you get benefit out of this. Or if the target is attacking you and your pet's on that, then it'll give you it. It's just really good to have the extra damage reduction. I don't see these other honor talents measuring up to the same capability. So Beast Mastery Hunter, you get more survivability, but it doesn't seem like you're really going to be seeing too much change in terms of gameplay or extra buttons. And then when we look at Survival Hunter, oh, that's Marksman. Survival Hunter, in a lot of cases, Roar of Sacrifice is pretty much baseline due to the staggering amount of assassination rogues. Mending Bandage is also pretty much baseline in those situations or against Feral Druids. So you are taking that quite frequently. Tracker's Net is also very useful in situations with melee DPS, but you definitely are mandatory locking in Roar of Sacrifice. It almost would have been nice if they could bake Survival Tactics and Roar of Sacrifice into the same talent, so you get 2 benefits and then you can take another talent. Diamond Dice is situationally powerful, but overall, Survival Hunters talents, the Scorpion Sting isn't that strong. Spider Sting is nice, but you really can't trade it over a Roar of Sacrifice or a Mending Bandage, but maybe as a 3rd slot. Against Wizards, you'll take the Spider Sting, and then against melee, you'll take the Tracker's Nets, or if you want some extra offense to reduce healing, you go for Viper Sting. But it seems to me overall that the Hunter honor talents are a bit lackluster in terms of their power overall. And then obviously Marksmanship Hunter. But really, Marksmanship Hunter? I mean, wait. Sorry, guys. I don't think we're going to see a lot of you, but we'll go through it anyway, you know? Roar of Sacrifice, again, is going to be pretty much baseline. You're taking that every match. And then you could open up to probably the True Shot Mastery, so you get some extra damage. And then you've got the 3rd slot open now because of Survival Tactics being baseline. So you could run for reduced cooldown on defensives. Although you're probably dead before you even get to that next aspect of the turtle. Sorry, Marksmanship Hunters. Scattershot being on the same dimension return as Freezing Trap. It's, again, for cross crowd control, it can be useful. There are some circumstances. So if you're Freezing Trapping a healer who has a Shadow Priest or a Demon Hunter that can remove Freezing Trap, you can use Scattershot to stop that target from getting there if it's not the target you're attacking, to stun it instead. Sniper Shot's kind of cheesy. Like, you can try and play with it, but it's not nearly as powerful as Greater Pyroblast. And then again, Viper Sting is it's okay for some extra healing, or some extra healing pressure on the other team, but doesn't seem. I mean, it's a little bit better for Marksman than Survival and Beast Mastery in terms of your overall choice, but just the overall power level of Hunter right now is so low that I don't think this really does very much. Assuming that the thing that I consider the most important part of the game right now, the pacing, doesn't change. So adding this extra honor talent, I don't see that changing the pacing when there are multiple gear slots that give absorption effects and healing effects to class's baseline, and then slow down the game so much so. Because hunters are very much crowd control the healer, kill a target in a small window of time. Now, if the target you're trying to kill in a small window of time is healing itself infinitely and doesn't die in that window of time, you can't win. So that's why we don't see a lot of hunters. And we will continue to not really see a lot of hunters if those absorption effects and healing effects on gear and Azerite traits, things like the Impassive Visage or the Burning Soul for Demon Hunters, and then of course the Crucible of Storms gear, almost any piece from there. And I'm pretty sure that these healing effects are also continuing into the new raid as well. So Hunter, you're not really feeling too great. And then again, in PvE, you got like an extra ice block, but you gotta be good at timing it, you know? So may take that, you know, you get something. All right, let's look at Mage. Arcane Empowerment. Now, I'll be honest here. My Mage knowledge is pretty limited. Now, if you know me, you probably know me for my Arena World Championship shoutcasting. And when I'm on the desk, I've got Zico and I've got Venruki next to me, which are both phenomenal mages. So I typically don't spend a lot of time with Mage because they're going to already know way more than I can know in that amount of time. So, especially Arcane, okay? Like, you guys that like playing Arcane, you go for it, okay? But like my knowledge is pretty limited on Arcane. So clear casting can now stack 2 additional times and increases the damage of arcane missiles by 5% per stack. Clear casting no longer reduces the mana cost of Arcane Explosion. That whole sentence structure has a lot in it that I'm not 100% sold on. So if you are a better Arcane mage, please feel free in the comments down below. And for any of the classes, if you feel like you want to list your own opinion down below, if I missed something or if I'm just a total idiot, because we all can be idiots, right? So just leave that down below. I'd love to read it. I'd love to make sure that the information is correct moving forward and know what your personal thoughts are if you're spending a lot of time with that class and it's not a class that I'm spending a lot of time with. In this situation, this talent is very strange to me. So I don't think you are using Arcane Explosion anymore as Arcane. Whereas in Legion, you would use Arcane Explosion to stack up your charges to then Barrage. But I don't believe that you're doing that anymore as Arcane. You're much more just avoid being attacked, press Spell Steal, and then occasionally toss out some missiles. So this negative impact of reducing the mana cost of Arcane Explosion I don't think is relevant. You just get some extra damage on Arcane Missiles. And then if we look at the Mage Talents, what does that open you up to, right? So Arcane is one that I'm not too familiar with, but I believe that you take Torment of the Weak has changed. This used to be damage on a slowed target, but you're usually taking Temporal Shield. And you are usually taking Mass Invisibility. And then you can slot in maybe Kleptomania instead, so against Druid teams, or more importantly against Shaman teams. So Ghost Wolf with the Pack Spirit Azerite trait, another Azerite trait that I think is too powerful in PvP and its effectiveness. If you run Kleptomania and you're trying to kill a Shaman, he's going to be in Ghost Wolf because it heals more than his class. Kleptomania, if he's got a Riptide up or something that's blocking your spell steals, you could just guaranteed take the Ghost Wolf away, try and kill the Shaman in the stun, and then end the game, right? So in that situation, you may take Kleptomania. Kleptomania is also very good against Druids. Aside from that, it looks like you're mostly just taking defense. You get more defense. And Arcane already doesn't die. I know that enough. Arcane, at least in PvP, doesn't die. So take it as you will. You continue to not die further. if we look at the implications or ramifications of PvE, this clear casting for Arcane Explosion could be detrimental to them. I'm not much of a PvE, right? Like I jump in every once in a while. I dabble in a couple of keys, but I actually think that this negative this could be bad for Arcane. Like taking this could be bad. Again, I believe that these essences are optional. You can take something else, but I mean, single target, it seems very good in player versus environment, but for AoE, seems like this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? But anyway, moving on, Frost gets concentrated coolness baseline, so in PvE, 10% frozen orb damage, and hopefully you won't Zaryu orb, because you can choose where you want to put it rather than aiming it. Seems good in PvE, right? And then if we go look at the baseline, I think mages aren't always running this as Frost, but it's because you have so many different talents that you can take and so many different builds that you can take. So you could either be running for like a Deep Shatter Frostbolt build, or you can be playing an Ice Lance build. You can even be playing a Burst of Cold build. So this opens you up, I believe, a lot. If I'm looking at the talents here, it's just an outside observation, really. Concentrated Coolness would be most of the time mandatory, unless maybe you're running a Deep Shatter build. You can get Frostbite more frequently, more snares, Temporal Shield. You could even run Temporal Shield and probably Kleptomania at the same time in some situations as well. Frost just gets more damage with this change in both PvE and PvP. So that's nice. I think it's a good one for Frost. And then, of course, Flame Cannon for Fire. So after standing still in combat for 2 seconds, your maximum health increases by 3%, your damage increases by 3%, and the range of your fire spells increased by 3 yards. This stacks up to 5 times. This could be really crazy in PvE, and you could avoid a lot of mechanics by just outranging them. This might make Fire longer range than Marksmanship Hunter, which I believe is the longest range class, if not Balanced Druid, in the game. The extra health, so you're more durable. Also, that gives you more shield on your fire barrier, your flaming blazing barrier. Your shield is scaled off the percent health. So overall, this is really strong for fire in PvE, and it's also pretty good in PvE. So if we look at fire, this then could maybe open up to take greater pyroblast more often, maybe in situations where you wouldn't really want to because there's too many interrupts, it's too difficult to take, but now you could. Or you could even maybe run, where is it? Is it not an honor talent? Firestarter to get the reduced cooldown on combust, because you're most likely going to be running Temporal Shield, unless for some reason you think you're never going to be attacked, but probably will. Temporal and Klepto will bounce between, and then you can maybe take Greater Pyro, because Flame Cannon is baseline, which is really strong. So overall for Fire, this is a very nice upgrade to it. Arcane's the only one I'm not certain on, because it's just Arcane is a mystery. But overall for Mage, it looks pretty solid. When we move over to Monk, we've got Mistweaver, and yes, that says Way of the Crane. Increases your physical damage to 25%. You become immune to some crowd control, and then all of your damage is increased by a lot. So this also means you can use Way of the Crane in PvE. So that's a lot of damage and a lot of healing. But it also means that you're locking yourself in as a Way of the Crane monk. Again, these are essences you put in, so potentially this isn't mandatory if you're a monk that doesn't like playing Way of the Crane. Like sometimes I don't like playing Way of the Crane. I prefer to just Soothing Mist and chill at the pillar, but for the monks that are punch monks, this is really good because you're taking that every game. So that is going to open up your talents a lot as a Mistweaver in PvP. And Mistweaver has a ton of talents that it wants to take. Chrysalis, you're taking pretty much every game to reduce the cooldown. This then means you can get Zen Focus Tea to be able to immune incoming interrupts more frequently. You can take Grapple Weapon to deny damage, but more importantly, prevent healing from classes like Death Knights and Demon Hunters. You'll be able to access that and Way of the Crane. So that's going to help you out with big pushes, counteract magic for damage over time effects. So the only way that this is not that great for you as a Mistweaver is if you're a Mistweaver that doesn't like playing Way of the Crane. But if you're a Mistweaver that likes playing Way of the Crane, this is huge. It just, because their honor talents are so strong, it opens up another slot and you gain a ton of power from it. So there's potential for Mistweaver that was already I would say contending with Restored Druid. When I was speaking to Swapsy at the spring finals, he thought that Mistweaver was actually a better healer than Druid, even though Druid ended up winning the tournament. So this could put Monk over the edge to be the best healer in 8.2 by having Way of the Crane baseline. Windwalker gets reverse harm baseline, so just extra defense, extra utility, and extra healing for the team. In PvP, it's great. I think it also does damage, doesn't it? So when you heal somebody, it will also deal damage. So it's also in PvE a pretty good damage increase. Definitely a frequently taken honor talent. So could open up your options here. Turbo Fist, you're pretty much auto locking in every game. Fortified Brew if you feel like you really need extra defense. You could then maybe in some situations run Grapple Weapon again to deny the healing of Death Knights to Demon Hunters. Ride the Wind for team utility. Tiger Eye Brew potentially for some high armor targets to try and kill. It seems overall like it's a very good talent to have baseline. So, and it will increase the power overall of the Windwalker Monk. So it seems like a great one. Then we move over to Paladin. You got Retribution. This is probably like I can see where they're coming from. It's like Ret Paladins don't move very fast. We'll make them move faster. But when you compare it to things like Way of the Crane, you get to move a tiny bit faster on an ability that's very limited and has a ton of counterplay. It's kind of sucky. That's kind of sucky. Retribution Paladin, sorry, I guess. It seems to me that there could have been a lot better ones. Something like Sanctuary. Of course, this might not have that much implications in PvE. Maybe even Lawbringer, but again, it seems to me that, as you see, the abilities that deal % health damage, and I think we'll get to some in the future, they're capped at your maximum health. So the honor talents that function based on your % health function differently in PvE, and I think that's something that they don't want to do frequently. So it's actually surprising to me that they're even doing it in the first place. And it's a bit strange to me that they actually have this wording here, because this wording here is almost them accepting that they have to have abilities function differently in PvE and PvP because it would be unacceptable otherwise. So it's very strange to me, some of the decision making that they've made in terms of how they're balancing Battle for Azeroth, because to me, it seems they want the whole game to be one coherent unit. Gear is gear. Abilities deal damage in the same way in all environments. But to bring these honor talents into player versus environment, they are now admitting that it would be unacceptable to have them function the same way. So I'm a little bit frustrated by that logic that they're applying here. While I agree and it makes sense, these abilities should function differently in PvE, because if you had Lightning Lasso deal whatever it is, 50% of the boss's health, yeah, that's not going to work. But there are things that are problematic in PvP, such as the healing and absorption effects and healing Azerite traits that are creating a lot of disgruntled PvP players that, if they were reduced more in PvP, would make the PvP players all happy and smiley. So, but that doesn't seem to be what is happening. So that is creating a bit of frustration to me, at least with the way that they've worded this for sure. But again, getting back on topic here with Retribution Paladin, you kind of got short-sorted. You kind of missed out. Like, sure, you get to move a little faster on your freedom, but there are so many honor talents in PvP specifically that would have helped Ret more, like Sanctuary or Lawbringer or Hammer of Reckoning. Even Vengeance Aura, like, just that would have given them more damage, more sustained damage, access to more cooldowns. That would have been more fun and interesting to the Retribution Paladin. And mostly because moving 30% faster on your freedom doesn't guarantee anything, because the things that you need to freedom against can just remove your freedom. Mage. And I think that then means the Mage is moving 30% faster. So this honor talent buffed mages against Rets, and Rets don't like mages. So I'm not a really big fan of this. I see where the logic is for this, but sorry, Ret Paladins. That's all I can say. Anyway, Holy gets Divine Favor. Now in PvE, it's pretty big. It's a pretty beefy Holy Light or Flash of Light heal, and it's no mana. And you don't have to deal with interrupts, and they've been adding a lot of interrupts on the boss mechanics, and this is also a talent that you're pretty much taking every game as a Holy Paladin. So now that you've got that baseline, you can then run Blessed Hands and Ultimate Sacrifice in some situations. You're pretty much always running Light's Grace. Divine Vision, you're not really sacrificing very much now anymore to take it. You may even possibly be able to squeeze in Avenging Light, which actually does a substantial amount of damage. So overall, for Holy Paladin, great honor talent to be able to get baseline with this essence. I've definitely recommended, assuming that it doesn't change moving forward or is problematic in PvE and gets changed to something else. Then we look at Priest. Discipline gets Premonition baseline, so it has 2 effects. One of the effects is probably not that useful in PvE, which is breaking crowd control as it hits you. Potentially it could be if there's some sort of boss that polymorphs you, but in PvE this is a very strong talent to get because it increases the duration of your atonement by a few seconds, and atonement can be very difficult to actually get out on multiple targets, especially in a raid. So by being able to just snap, activate it, and get an extra 5 seconds, that's going to open you up to a lot of power. This is very nice for Discipline in PvE, and then in PvP as well, because you want to take this, right? This is kind of the skill player for Discipline Priest. You would like to take it in all situations because there's usually at least 1 or 2 abilities on the other team that you could Premonition, but if it's only 1 or 2, should you really take it over a different talent that gives you more damage or healing? So having Premonition in both PvE and PvP is very nice. It just opens you up to get things like Trinity, to have more impactful gameplay, get more damage, get more healing with Archangel, or maybe more damage with Dark Archangel. It opens up a lot of talents, and the Discipline Priest talents are really great and powerful and useful in a lot of different situations. So it's a great pickup for the Discipline Priest. You're pretty happy if you're a Discipline Priest, other than the fact that you're a Discipline Priest, other than the fact that you're not a Restoration Druid. That's the only thing. But who knows, maybe in 8.2 that changes. Now, Holy Priest, we haven't seen a lot of them. The only time I really see Holy Priest is in 2 versus 2, playing with an Elemental Shaman or a Destro Warlock, and they're just casting Greater Heal and Chaos Bolt, and you're like, what do I get interrupt? I don't know. It's kind of hard. I mean, in that situation, that actually sometimes occurs in 3v3 as well, but Prayer of Many is not as powerful as it was in Legion, although it's nice. You get some extra healing. I'm not sure if this will bring Holy Priest in 3s to the same level. Maybe it will. It may be worth trying or going back to Holy to give it a go. The main contender for Holy is if it can compete mana-wise and survivability-wise. Holy Priest's main weakness has just been for a while now just getting run down by double melee with multiple interrupts. But now that you've got that, you've got an instant cast heal. Maybe that helps you survive. So I'm not 100% sold on this because the information is so limited and we don't see Holy Priest that often, but it may be worth trying. If you're a Holy Priest, give it a go, give it a whirl, see what happens. Shadow has a ton of useful honor talents. I mean, they could have almost picked any of them and it would have been wow. But this one, instant cast Void Eruption. Player versus environment, that's a lot of downtime that you're saving. So being able to get Void Origins baseline for Shadow is a massive damage increase or utility increase. It opens up being able to take Psyfiend, which is, when you weigh it, it's like so easy to kill. I can't sacrifice another honor talent that's guaranteed benefit. It really opens up a lot for Shadow overall. So if you're a Shadow Priest, I would be super stoked by getting Void Origins baseline with this essence. And then moving over to Rogue. Everybody gets Smoke Bomb. Really nice playmaking ability in PvP. It's really strong cooldown. It then allows all the rogue specs to either take more utility or more damage. Really good in PvP to be able to have this baseline on all specs. In PvE, I could see it being good if you need to pull a mob to your team. Let's say if there's a spellcaster mob and you need to get it close to you because it'll aggro something or there's some other mechanic in there. You could drop a smoke bomb, it will line of sight it, and the mob will run into the smoke bomb. So it's more utility for rogues in Mythic Plus, which there's already enough rogues in Mythic Plus. I don't know if they needed it, but hey, it's useful in PvE as well. So this is nice for rogues overall. So you'll be able to get more damage, you'll be able to get more utility, you'll be able to get more defense, you'll be able to take Creeping Venom in more situations, maybe even take things like Mind Numbing Poisons in more situations. System Shock, Creeping Venom combo, huge damage benefit for Assassination. Outlaw, you can get maybe some extra utility to make your team move faster or for some extra personal mobility on top of your own damage increase. So being able to have Smoke Bomb baseline on Rogue is very powerful. But again, outside of Assassin, I'd say this falls more in line with Outlaw and Subtlety than Assassin, because Assassin has much more consistency and it has the Mortal Strike effect to reduce healing. As I said earlier, the The name of the game is to get as many healing and absorption effects as possible to make you just never die. So Assassination can kind of cut through that because it reduces healing effects and it has good overall sustained damage. Outlaw and Subtlety do not have that. They don't have either. Subtlety and Outlaw fit in the same boat as Hunters, where they have to kill in a small window of time. Now, if the other team has 10 items that heal them infinitely during that period of time and they can never kill them, the specs don't work. They can't win. So if you're Subtlety and Outlaw, I'm not sure if Smoke Bomb does help that because you can prevent healing during it. But I'm not sure if you're going to see a lot of them, assuming that the meta doesn't change and the pacing doesn't change, because I haven't seen any tuning changes towards those healing and absorption effects. So it may not be too useful for Subtlety and Outlaw. But if you're Assassination, you're more Assassination damage. So if you're Assassination, you're pretty happy. You're overall happy, but again, in those circumstances, it may not matter too much. Elemental is getting Lightning Lasso baseline. In PvE, it's just a stun. Looks like it. I'm not sure if it'll do comparable damage to your rotation or even be worth using other than its stunning effect, because it only does as much damage as your maximum health. It could be. And it may not work on bosses because it's a stun. So this essence in PvE might not be something that you even look at. In PvP, you're taking Lightning Lasso every game, and the reason for that is because stamina is very high in this patch. They increased the stamina on Azerite gear by, I think it was 50% in 8.1, and then our gear is just getting better, so we're just getting more stamina. More stamina, more stamina. Stamina means more health, more hit points, and this does 40% of a target's maximum health. So if your health is higher, it does more damage. So these abilities are going to scale exponentially as the expansion continues onward. So if you got an ability like this that heals you or does damage based on percent health, you're very happy. Like, this is and it's also a stun. So this is pivotal to how Elemental Shamans kill things. They get it baseline, so it's going to be very good for you as an Elemental Shaman. It then opens up your talent tree a lot more. So again, you want the percentage healing, right? So Spectral Recovery, 3% of your maximum health every 2 seconds. And you can sit in Ghost Wolf, maybe take a couple Pack Spirit Azerite traits to add to that healing, and you're going to be Gucci. Then you can take Sky Fury Totem more frequently, Groundy Totem in conjunction with it if you really wanted to. Maybe some extra utility with the Traveling Storms to try and help your teammates out with double melee. You're happy if you're Elemental Shaman. That's a really big one to get as Elemental. Enhancement, again, we don't see a lot of enhancement. And why is that, right? Well, enhancement actually does pretty good damage, but it doesn't move too well. It doesn't move around the map too well. And it doesn't heal itself without losing damage. So, again, going back to the healing and absorption effect, if you have some of the Crucible of Storms gear, enhancement feels a bit better. And its damage overall is actually quite powerful. You can easily chop up things like Destruction Warlocks and Shadow Priests. The problem is that it can't stay in the fight and outlast all of the healing effects that exist on other classes and other specializations. So it kind of just gets left to the wayside. Now you're getting Ride the Lightning, which is a kind of a combination of Honor Talents from a previous patch with Forked Lightning and Ride the Lightning. It's big damage, Honor Talent. Really good at PvE, and I think Enhanced was struggling a bit in PvE. So maybe this could put them over the top as a Mythic Plus specialization, although it doesn't really bring a lot of utility. There's potential there to just enhance and be a lot more powerful in PvE with this talent. And it's also just, it's nice for it in PvP, but like I said, the limitations of Enhancement Shaman right now, it just opens it up so you can take Spectral Recovery, which, again, it's percent healing, very powerful, but you have to be in Ghost Wolf and you can't attack. And if you're running away as an Enhancement Shaman, you're also then limited by not being able to hit things from ranged, unlike Elemental. So Enhancement is just left in this weird boat where its percentage health abilities don't really benefit. It doesn't benefit it probably not even half as much as the other specializations get to benefit from their healing and absorption effects. So it's just, it's like it's an all-in specialization. You're probably playing with a Windwalker or an Arms Warrior. You're trying to kill something very fast, or you're running away the entire game and then trying to just punch them down and dampening. Enhance is not probably feeling too great right now, unless the pacing of the game changes overall. Now, if we look at Restoration, it's getting Ancestral Gift, which is effectively immunity to interrupt and silence effects. Pretty nice to have. Both PvE and PvP, as there are silence and interrupts in PvE. This then can just open you up to take more options. The Cleansing Water is one that's nice. You can preemptively put Healing Rain down, dispel damage over time effects, which is agonizing in rated battlegrounds. But you can also dispel crowd control on yourself. If you're standing in the rain and you get crowd controlled in the rain, it has a chance to dispel you out of it. You can take Electrocute more frequently to try and do some extra damage. Grounding Totem more often. Spectral Recovery you can take pretty much every game. So it's a pretty good one for Restoration Shaman. Will it make them as good as Druid or Mistweaver? It's yet to be found. I don't think so, especially with Mistweaver getting Way of the Crane. I think that Mistweaver may end up being the best healer, given what we've seen, but let's keep moving on. Now, Affliction Warlock. I don't even know if I should read it, because it doesn't seem like it exists. The honor talent that they've gone with is also a bit strange to me, because I remember speaking to Warlock players in the past that said that this honor talent is actually a damage loss. This is similar to the Demonic Origins one for Demon Hunter, that this talent is actually a damage loss. Now, I'm imagining that what they're thinking with this is that this will then, you want to put unstable affliction on more targets, and it'll last longer, and try and bring back some of the area of effect niche that Affliction had, because Affliction is, in my mind, Affliction Warlock is not even, it hasn't been Affliction Warlock for 2 expansions, maybe even longer. It's been a single target spec, and Affliction is all about just damage on everything, whittling them down, watching everything wither down. Affliction now is just like, and then kill something really fast. It's not even Affliction. Like, Affliction, to me, Marksmanship Hunter and Affliction are just, they're just not at all to the same standard that they used to be, or the feel or the vibe that they used to be. So I'm not sold on this. Like, maybe this increases your damage on area of effect. Maybe. There were other honor talents for Affliction. Notably, Affliction dies very quickly, so getting Demon Armor baseline may have been more beneficial to it. You could then go into some of the curses more often, maybe Casting Circle for more frequency, and then the Gateway, so getting a longer Gateway in Arena. So you'll be able to access a lot more utility, but overall, unless Affliction changes broadly, I don't think adding an extra honor talent is really going to help. So it's unfortunate for Affliction. I mean, obviously they could tune the number so its damage is really high or it doesn't die and it would be good, but overall its playstyle and its feel is just lost. Demonology gets Nether Ward. Not too useful to you in PvE. This one seems a bit random. At least in terms of regards to like functioning in both environments. In other words, seems a bit strange. I mean, it's nice in PvP for sure, because you just get a Spell Reflect mechanic baseline. I was actually very surprised to see that they put a Spell Reflect mechanic into player. This makes me think this is a placeholder and they're not going to use it. So the reasoning for removal of spells like Spell Reflect, Dark Simulacrum, abilities that interact with a spell from another monster is that in Warlords of Draenor, there were the challenge modes. I think they were still called challenge modes. So you could put a grounding totem down and it would deny, with a glyph, it would deny all this area of effect lightning damage, completely trivializing the challenge mode effectively. And then also Zul'Harrak and Ragefire Citadel, Hellfire Citadel had a Shadow Bolt, I believe, or something along that line that could be spell reflected, and it totally removed the mechanic. So to my understanding, those abilities probably have multiple reasons for being removed, but a main reason was because they could bug out bosses or bug out dungeons. So to see them bring in a spell reflect mechanic, I don't think that this is going to stay. Using that logic, I really don't think that this is going to stay. I think it's a placeholder. And I think there are other ones that maybe we see taken before it. Maybe the instant Dreadstalkers is too powerful, but Fellord could be nice utility for Demonology Warlock, especially bringing it into the Mythic Plus situation. Although Fellord is like, it's so weak in comparison to the way that it used to be. It's not even a Lord anymore. It's more like a Fell Wimp. Demonology is a bit sad right now. It's very durable, tanky, but it doesn't have the same kind of bite that it used to have. Destruction is getting Demon Armor baseline now. Very good in PvP. A little bit of extra health in PvE, but not really a huge benefit as some of the other ones. The Warlock overall is kind of just meh. At least in PvE. Obviously, having Demon Armor baseline for PvP is huge. That means that you just get more utility. You can take Roots, you can take Fell Fissure, you can take Focus Chaos. Like, big buff to Destruction Warlock in PvP. I didn't think Destruction Warlock needed that much of a help comparatively to Demonology or Affliction, but if you're a Destruction Warlock, you're just getting more destruction. So, really good for Destruction Warlock. Not so good for Affliction and Demonology. Warrior. Arms Warriors are getting the Sharpened Blade baseline. Pretty good in player versus environment. You can also deny some healing effects, but just the extra damage on your Mortal Strike. And then in PvP, it's very nice to have this. See, with them to giving Nether Ward and then not Spell Reflect, this is where I'm wondering, like, why. I think the Demonology one will change, but regardless, being able to get Sharpened Blade baseline means that you're then open up to reduce cooldown on Bladestorm, Disarm for melee, Duel for extra damage reduction, Master Commander for more rallying cries, which is very useful because, again, it's percent health based. It's really strong. Maybe some War Banter for crowd control. Overall, giving almost any of these talents baseline to Arms Warrior just opens up to be able to get another one immediately, so it is useful to Arms Warrior. Now, Arms Warrior is lacking some of the self-healing mechanics that Death Knights and Demon Hunters and Windwalkers bring, so maybe with the PvE gear healing that they bring, that they can get, they will get up to the same level, but if without that, they're not. They have the advantage of being able to cut through the healing with the Mortal Strike effect, so Arms Warrior, it's probably middle of the pack, would be my best estimation. Now, Fury is doing surprisingly well with Fury, Windwalker, Restoration Druid as a composition. So getting Battle Trance baseline, this just again opens up the utility and the defense even further, or maybe some extra damage. You can run Thirst for Battle more frequently, or maybe some team utility with Disarm, as you were so locked into personal honor talents that helped you but not your team. So Fury Warrior is going to get a little bit more team utility or personal defense, maybe some extra damage. It benefits Fury. I wouldn't say to it. Maybe it is a drastic margin again because it's percent health based, but it's not comparable to things like Way of the Crane for Windwalker, right? Overall, what do I think? I think adding an extra honor talent is greatly benefiting some specializations. There are a handful, maybe like 4 or 5 that don't really gain much benefit from, or the benefit that they gain is nullified because of the pacing of the game and the potency and how powerful the healing and absorption effects from gear and Azerite traits currently are in PvP, and that's kind of where you stand. So this is pretty much a mandatory lock-in essence for 90% of the specs in PvP at least, and then 10% or so I think you're going to be taking a different essence overall. So if this is benefiting your spec that you play, I'm very excited for you. It's going to be a great time. Again, this is PTR, so maybe they will change it. They probably will change it. So then every spec is getting something that's awesome and to look forward to. So either way, I hope that you enjoyed my review of the new PvP Honor Talent Essence that is coming in patch 8.2. Appreciate you tuning in and watching my videos, and I hope you watch the next one. Please consider hitting the subscribe button. Please comment down below if you have opinions as well over what talents you would like or what talents you think would be the best there. I really want to have some discussion about this. That's basically it. So really appreciate it. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.